All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Mike Bush. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Real quick, as a show of hands, who here is familiar with upcycling? Oh, wow, great. All right, so we're going to go ahead and skip the talk then, and we'll just go ahead and have cocktails. Anybody want a mimosa? Also raise your hand if you're concerned about food waste. Great. And how many of you, like, quite literally go out and intentionally buy from brands or companies that you know do upcycling or are concerned about reducing food waste? Yeah, that's a little harder to find. It's hard to identify who the upcyclers are or who the socially responsible folks are because they typically don't tell you, because it's typically not the product that's upcycled, it's typically an ingredient that's in there. And so we're here today to talk about that very topic. So I'd like to real quick introduce you to Audrey Carpenter and Katie Hagan. I'll let you introduce yourselves since you know yourselves quite well. So Audrey?
Hi. Yes, thanks, Mike. Yes, my name is Audrey. A little background, I've been in the food ingredient world for over 6 years, and in the last 2 years, about 2 years, have been focused on upcycled sustainable ingredients at Kainova Bioworks. It's been great. It's learning, working closely with customers and really learning about their sustainable priorities, and including the brewery sector for sure. So just recently, I joined the American Society of Brewing Chemists. I do have a background in chemistry, and we talk about things like greener beverages and sustainability in a subcommittee. So yes, that's me.
And Katie?
Oh, hi, everybody. My name's Katie Hagan, and I work for Matson. We're a food and beverage innovation firm based in the San Francisco area. And we lead clients through product development and commercialization of different food products across virtually all channels, temp states. We also lead projects with ingredient companies who are interested in bringing novel new ingredients to the marketplace, and we help them figure out what their product or ingredient is good at so that they can then go target those companies and industries where the product works best. And that's where we came to partner with Kainova over the past year, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later.
So Katie, Matson is like, a massive thought leader in the food space. How do you guys define upcycling?
From my perspective, upcycling is taking a look at a food brand or agricultural entity's waste streams of food ingredients, which might otherwise go towards either animal feed or frankly be thrown away, and taking those ingredients and creating value-added food products for humans, and basically seeking to take that ingredient to its highest and best use.
Audrey?
Yes. Well, it's interesting as you ask the group, show of hands how many are aware of upcycling, and this group is very aware. We are seeing in the consumer market that there's a growing awareness to the food crisis, and that can be impacted by reducing food waste. So I think that there's definitely a mindfulness that people, when you go to the grocery market, it's not just what I purchase is going to impact the environment, but there's still a lot of work to do in making it more of well-known. And like, as you said, about having brands and CPGs, note that this has an upcycled ingredient in it. And because if you do a research and just look it up, there's not a lot of companies. You really have to go into their website. So with that, I think that it's important that people understand that upcycled is where you are adding value. So it's not just like an old school reduce and reuse. It's not the thinking of, I'm going to go to my favorite takeout, dumpster dive, and then add that to my dinner. It's going to be better. Like, no, that's going to be worse. So it's really kind of trying to teach that I'm creating or our food scientists, our culinary, they're creating something that is even better than what it was before. So one man's trash or a person's trash is another person's treasure. And so I think that's the message that we really need to like have our marketing and have the CPG brands like stay with the curve.
I would also add that it's a profit positive endeavor, or can be, because what was once a cost to offload this otherwise, this waste stream, if it can be turned into a value-added product that you are then selling in the marketplace, you're turning it into a revenue stream. So there's the opportunity for triple bottom line benefit by taking a look at your waste streams and repurposing what would otherwise be a cost to you into a product.
So to kind of add to that, Katie, so what is the current upcycling landscape? I mean, I've got a couple of slides for you, but so what's it looking like, and what are you seeing in the marketplace?
I mean, this slide really lays the case down. It's a really challenging situation that we're in as a planet, frankly. If food waste were a country, it would be number 3. The numbers are staggering. So we waste more than 1 billion pounds, or tons, of food every year on a global basis. And across all those sectors, 17% of all food is wasted, never gets eaten at all. I have another stat from somewhere else in our work that American businesses and agriculture spends $218 billion every year growing, transporting, disposing of food that never gets eaten. So it's an enormous opportunity to flip that around and look at that as a waste stream that can be turned into a new product and therefore a revenue stream for brands.
And to kind of to further add on that, so when we look at who is it, some of the research you guys have shown is like, who are the advocates for the upcycled products? I mean, the slide kind of speaks for itself, but
Yeah.
What are you seeing?
So as with all things sustainability, Gen Z is leading the charge for all of us. Certainly there are older folks like us also involved. But Gen Z is the most engaged and willing to do more, pay more, and pursue more paths towards more sustainable choices than any previous generation. This slide just, is supportive of that. Particularly when it comes to, products, they're doing their research. Their BS meter is very sharp, and they are doing their homework, and they really want to make sure that products they're buying are aligned with their values.
Gotcha. So we have this culture of abundance and excess, and we want all of our manufacturing facilities producing at full capacity, regardless of uptake and everything else. So, really, when we have this culture that almost reinforces over-consumerism and over-consumption and underutilization, so why does upcycling matter? In the grand scheme of things, we understand why it matters, but in the mind of consumers, what are you hearing? And in the minds of companies like Kainova, why is upcycling, an important part of your business plan? I mean, obviously with Kainova, it is a key foundational part of the business. So, what's your take on why it's so important at this point?
So to start, an astonishing 20 to 30% of greenhouse gas emissions comes from food production. So right there, that's a significant impact on global warming. And what we need to be aware of is that the food system is beyond what's just on our plate. It's intertwined with issues that range from nutrition, hunger, but also to planet type things such as climate and biodiversity and water. So, that's just a staggering right there that it should matter. And, upcycling is a way to offset these negative impacts. So if we find a way to reuse or even make something valuable versus throwing it in the trash, then essentially we're sending less to the landfill and less that it's going to emit gases. So, it's something that we want people to care more about and want to know, that there is a personal impact that they can have just going to the grocery store. But it would be nice to see that, there's more availability and understanding how I make that impact with marketing on labels. And so when you think about it, when you're doing something upcycled, you're removing something from what's going to go in the trash, and then you're also not adding to the landfill, it's a double whammy against food waste.
Well, how does Kainova address that? What do you do specifically for, to address the food waste issue?
So Kainova offers a solution, and especially when you were talking about manufacturing and all the waste, and I can't imagine being in that type of position and just seeing and just feeling that loss of profit or feeling that loss of product and energy. So I'm like the procurement and supply chain of my kitchen, right? So I know I'm spending the money and I'm throwing things away, and it's so frustrating. And it also feels like you're a failure, because you're like, what you're doing, you're adding to the landfill, you didn't plan your week out right. So, unfortunately, food scientists have not come up with a way just for food to last forever, because then we wouldn't be talking about this. But what we have instead is we can extend shelf life, so we can give it a longer life cycle, so less loss along the way, and less that goes to landfill, and that's what Kainova offers. So, and it fits in well with manufacturing because it's very easy to use, and it can also cut down on energy cost, because Kyber, it's a natural antimicrobial, extending the shelf life, but it's super easy to use. It's a liquid, and you can avoid some high energy costs such as pasteurization. It is, of course, a case-by-case test scenario, but other kill steps. So on one hand, you are lengthening essentially the cycle of that quality of that product, and then it's something that's a win-win for consumers because, preservatives have a negative connotation, but if it's something like what it comes from, we'll talk about this, I'm sure later, a white button mushroom, there's familiarity, there's
Why don't we talk about that
trust.
now? Where are you actually getting how are you participating in the upcycling with your ingredient?
Yeah, let's talk about what Kyber is and where it comes from. So to start, where it comes from, and our co-founders, pretty great people, and they really spent some time with their science and spent time learning more about mushrooms and identifying this fiber that is in the stem of white button mushrooms. So it just works out, especially when our goal is to reduce food waste in final products, is that we collect discarded or upcycled stems from commercialized farms in Canada and the US. And to talk about what it is, so we extract this fiber and we put it into a slightly acidic food grade solution. And in that solution, it becomes very positive in nature. And so that works out really well because when you put it in your food or beverage, those culprits, the food spoilage organisms, the mold, yeast, and bacteria have a negative membrane. So they're attracted like magnets, and Kyber is able to really disrupt that species, that membrane, like killing it, but it also inhibits it from growth. So it's a full spectrum protector, and especially if you've heard recent articles in the NA about Salmonella and Listeria, this is something that will protect not only shelf life but also any pathogens or bacteria.
And I know that Matson and Kainova partnered. So, Katie, what did you discover when it came to how you formulate with this product? I think we have a product shot here, but so how did the interaction work, and what did you guys find by working with Kyber in food matrices?
So Matson partnered with Kainova to take the Kyber ingredient and test it in several different dairy applications. We formulated the product in partnership with Cal Poly SLO and their dairy science department. They have pilot industrial equipment that we were able to use to generate real life conditions. And then, did inoculation and sensory and challenge studies to show how Kyber stood up relative to the other leading antimicrobials in the marketplace. So things like natamycin and potassium sorbate, MicroGuard, and the testing we conducted was able to show that the Kyber worked as well or better as some of these other preservatives in the market, with a much cleaner label, as well as being an upcycled ingredient as well. And then we then also, not just doing the lab, like shelf study test and challenge, we also conducted sensory testing with Matt's sensory team, and we were able to show that the Kyber product also was had almost no, if any, impact on flavor, which is in contrast to some of these other ingredients where they were creating off flavors in the finished product. So it was a really successful partnership, and then Kyber was able to take this data, and it will hopefully be, finding clients in the dairy industry to take on the product because it's so effective and in extending shelf life and also not impacting the eating experience of the product.
Audrey, what are you seeing from customers, from potential customers or customers? How is this particular, the Kyber product, really impacting the food industry with the customers you're working with?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, especially you would see a lot of our early adopters are going to be like the startups. They're more of like the forward thinking, and they're really when they're doing a startup and they're setting their prototype together, they're really so invested in what those ingredients look like. And so that's something that Kyber is really showcasing to them, that they have something that can be friendly to a consumer, have that healthy halo, because you can label it. It can be a natural flavor, or if you want to do a mushroom extract, again, about the easy to use. And, one of the best components is that there's not a sensory impact. When you're developing something as sensitive and as passionate as a flavor and a final product, you don't want to impact that. But there is, I find it interesting, you see so many brands that say, no preservatives. And it's like, why are preservatives a bad thing? Because if you look back, in the last 50, 100 years, they're synonymous with, okay, that's going to be overly processed. That's going to be a synthetic. That's going to be a chemical. That's going to be bad for me, and I only need it in moderation. So what we really still need to work on is educating, and bringing awareness to preservatives can be a natural and good thing. And it's also, has this environmental climate impact. But something interesting I came across when I was getting ready for this is, preservatives, they started in centuries, Canning, yes, canning. Napoleon. Actually, so even the Roman Empire, so they, where the word salary comes from is Latin for salt. So they used to pay wages in salt. That's how valuable it was. And that's where you get the idiom, worth your salt. So this is something that, people are on a paleo diet or like, I want to eat clean from the earth. It's like, it's a mushroom. You are eating clean from the earth. And so that's something that I think is still, we need to overcome. But there's definitely, our clients are just very passionate and so excited to use Kyber. They're so excited to have, improve their quality, be able to branch out in their distribution. I mean, there's myriad reasons why they're very advantages for them.
And speaking of clean label, how is Kyber labeled in like a nutrient ingredient list?
So it would be, it's FEMA GRAS approved as a natural flavor, which is works for some of our clients that already have labels and they're already using some type of natural flavor. And then there's also like 4 or 5 different mushroom call outs. So, mushrooms are a powerhouse right now. So is fiber, so is extract, and there's kind of different, you can move those around and kind of choose. But
So rather than some non-pronounceable chemical name, you can put it in as mushroom extract or something like that.
yeah, so
Fabulous.
that's where it's consumer friendly because they don't have to guess, is this natural?
Gotcha. And Katie, looking at the work that you've done at Matson, I'm sure you're doing a ton of work cleaning up labels for folks. Without breaching any confidentiality, are you able to share some projects or products and innovations that you guys have done for kind of clean label impact in general? And I think I've got a couple of slides here for you that kind of.
Yeah, and there's some that if you're walking around this vast expo, there's a number of them out there that you can taste. So, for example, rind snacks is an example you're able to taste out there. Ugly fruit, pip snacks, all of these are using upcycled ingredients, and they're delicious. And go buy some, support the cause. But there are a number of products out there as well. So on the screen, upcycled spent brewer's grain is an interesting space. We actually worked with AB InBev, largest brewer anywhere, and helped them take what they had were spent brewer's grains, and they wanted to figure out they were naturally nutritious and were getting thrown out or sent to animal feed. And they wanted to have us help them turn it into a flour and then take that flour and try it across a range of different applications to see where it performed well, where it tasted great functionally, hedonically, culinarily. And so we partnered with AB InBev, did that application work. They then branded this line of flours Evergreen, and it's an available ingredient for the industry now to use, and that is an upcycled product. So then one example here is this bagel, looks Stone and Skillet, is using upspent brewer grains. Other examples are from Del Monte and Too Good, where they're using upcycled fruit and fruit juice, whether it's lemons or otherwise, that might not have made it to a product otherwise. Somehow they were a waste stream. It could have been Del Monte's fruit cutting process that yielded the juice, and others. So there's lots of opportunity. There's also opportunity if you aren't the brand manufacturer, the food manufacturer, or the agricultural entity. There are a lot of companies now creating their own upcycled ingredients that you can source. So you don't have to be the source of the upcycled ingredient. You can find the upcycled ingredient and use it in your products.
And Audrey, what are you seeing? So there's obviously an uptick in this. Obviously, the screen kind of speaks for itself with some of the products. I mean, a specific call out, for the chocolate chip cookies, upcycled. You don't get much more obvious than that. But what are you seeing as far as the messaging, the way that the companies that you're working with want to, communicate this to consumers? Because it's a really important message that consumers understand. Hey, this contains an upcycled ingredient. But, other than saying that my chocolate chip cookies are upcycled and having that be the brand, how are you communicating that, and what are you seeing in the market?
So it's still kind of in early stages, to be honest. Going back to the spent grains that you just talked about, like that's something that like brewers have been doing for many of years, like way before there started being more like awareness. They care so much about sustainability, and actually their spent grains are 85% of what is their waste. And so they've been, if you go to a brewer, they're definitely, have some type of messaging up, and that's really cool to learn. I did not know that about AB InBev, and I'm from St. Louis, so I'm really excited for that tidbit. But would you go, I think, is there a slide with some of the products that, here we go. So here's some examples of some clients that we're working with. And so, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on them and also talk about what they plan to do as far as showcasing their ingredients. So I'll start with Chubby Snacks here. Has anybody, raise of hands, who's heard of Chubby Snacks? Okay, we'll get ready for this. Everybody, sit down. Sorry.
Good job. Everybody did a great job sitting immediately.
So Chubby Snacks is a natural, like healthy version of a peanut butter and jelly. Like genius, right? Like why, I don't know why this is just new, but I'm obviously very excited about it. So where we were able to help Chubby, it was going into their jam. And so we extended their shelf life from 1 month to 4 months. So this is more so along a benefit for them to be able to condense their operations and save on shipping because they can ship out more because it's going to last longer. Chickpea Bites is an interesting one. They are based out of Vancouver, Canada, and what they are doing is they're having on their website, they have like a different page for each ingredient. No, it's not, so this is new and it's probably not up yet, but their plan is to do one just on Khyber. So they'll have one on monk fruit and then one on Khyber to say like, hey, listen to this story. And this is why it's important to us. So it's really fitting in with their brand. And that was the same with Chubby too. Khyber really fit in with their messaging of being natural and being healthy for you. Coco Fino is, again, this one is more of a distribution really help for them because they were like on an island in Vancouver and the poor guy was driving a boutique. He was driving him, 30 days in the month, he would have to drive it around. So by adding Khyber and extending the shelf life, it decreased his driving. And now he's actually in a recyclable container as well. And just very healthy for you message, which Khyber fits in. And then liquid stick packs. This one isn't going to show it, but they're going into a child or a kid's beverage that's going to be recyclable. So there'll be like a recyclable claim for the container and also an upcycled claim. So those are some examples. And I would just mention about like the brewers with like NA beer. We have one called wait, hold on. This one isn't mine, so I need to make sure I say it right. Well, anyway, it's really helpful in NA beers. Just that. Yeah, especially if they're, NAs is such just a growing trend right now, but it's also such a sensitive area because if you're brewing in an environment of regular beer, there's going to be yeast, and then there's going to be concern with fermentation. So, that's just a few examples.
Fantastic. So when we look at all of the innovation that's happening and everything that you're seeing at Mattson and everything that you're seeing at Kainova, really how does adding Khyber to the mix affect things like supply chain and contract manufacturers? Is this going to involve like new food making processes? Is it going to involve new equipment? Are they going to have to install new things, or is this just kind of a turnkey ingredient?
Mix it and go. That's all you've got to do. So it's really nice for manufacturers that are going to be making changes, because you do not have to, like with the Mattson study, we have pictures on it, and it's something as simple as just making sure that you add it maybe at the right time. So anything that's fermented, you would add post-fermentation. But it's completely healthy for you. You could bathe in it. You could drink it. I wouldn't, but you could, like versus other things that are might be natural out there, might have a lot of capital to invest in, or maybe some like tricky materials, or even potassium sorbate. It has like a sweet spot. It might, some things might come in powder. We do come in liquid, but that we find that to be very easy for production to implement. So it is just streamlined. As far as supply chain goes, we are a full circle message where we reduce, food waste from the onset of our supply chain of our raw material to the intended target of extending final products and reducing food waste at that full circle message. And Yeah, so we definitely think that it's beneficial from a manufacturer standpoint because you don't have to make a lot of changes. And the dosage rates are very, very low. So it's very, cost efficient, especially when you are able to decrease time and temperature and in heat processing by adding this very effective shelf life antimicrobial.
Katie, were you going to add something?
I just wanted to add, as an example, in terms of where Kyber has such a positive impact on the supply chain and shrinkage and issues with managing the retailer for your clients. For example, in the strawberry yogurt and cream cheese work that we did, you were able to double the shelf life. So that's just incredibly powerful if someone's coming to a retailer and their shelf life is 30 days and now your shelf life is 60 days. The ability to have your product in store longer, have less issues with expiration, less issues with shrinkage, is a huge cost savings and it's just so much more efficient for the brand. So it's a great example of how you can be profit positive for your client.
And circling back a little bit on the work that you did in dairy, what did you find as far as, I mean, did you find any issues in using the ingredient, or was it just as simple as, adding a powder and going, or was...
I believe it was quite simple addition to these 2 dairy applications that we did that were done, I believe, towards the end of the processing, in accordance with, the guidance from Kynova on how to apply it, but it was very simple.
And so, Audrey, does your company provides then all the formulation assistance that folks need to...
Oh yeah, we start with of course sample instructions, like giving dosage, but we also have a biosafety level 2 lab where we do a lot of testing. We have 11 scientists, 2 with PhDs, and so we do a lot of testing. So we do a lot of, we want to know as much as we can about our product and about applications. So we routinely will do comparison tests, and that's where we just, have that confidence to go into a third-party study with Mattson, knowing that there's a very big likelihood that we're going to perform on par with the synthetics and that we're going to outperform other natural preservatives out there. So, it's something we feel but we do want testing. We love validation. We love data. Yes. But I did want to mention about what you just said with the manufacturing. Oh no, I'm losing my train of thought. Okay, sorry, never mind. It'll come.
There we go. Well, if it pops into your head, just raise your hand and do the thing. So, just kind of wrap up before we get to questions. We know this is important to consumers, but what advice would you give to folks that are in the market with finished products? How do you communicate the upcycling message most appropriately so that it's not like? And the same thing with Kyber. How do you relay the message without saying, we've replaced your preservative with another one, it's just called something else that you can pronounce? But it really is an interesting approach, because with some of these fresh products, you're not adding preservatives that people recognize as preservatives. But how do you encourage people to do the messaging to consumers so that consumers understand the benefit of Kyber or upcycling? Katie, why don't you take the upcycling side first?
Yeah, I think there's a range out there in how people are communicating or not communicating what their ingredients are, and if they're positioned to really make hay with the upcycled message. There's the one brand that was called Upcycled. That's pretty forward. But there is a range, and it's really up to you and your brand and the positioning that you have in terms of how much you choose to take advantage of this benefit. It may be that it's something you have on your website and you have obviously in your ingredient statement, but you're not doing front of pack marketing of, hey, we're using upcycled ingredients. That may be a missed opportunity, or it may just be you want to do this and you want to be part of the solution, but you don't want it to be part of your messaging. That's one tact. The other end is to be all about this positioning and to talk to the audience that's really excited to be part of the solution. They want to buy those products that are using upcycled ingredients, and they want to know that your product and your mission and why you chose the ingredients you chose aligns with their values. And that would be, hey, I'm going after Gen Z, and I know this is important to Gen Z in particular, and I want to make sure they know that we're doing the right thing.
And do you have some way at Kinova to assist companies with recognition of the fact? I mean, do they tell people there's Kyber inside, or what?
We
How do you guys do
love
that?
when people tell people that the Kyber is inside. Yeah, I don't have a lot to add as far as avenues to get that messaging out there. I think it's a lot that is required of the marketing team. What would be really nice to see, though, is to get retailers on board. Retailers really just like encouraging brands and maybe doing something in the grocery store to make it just collective and easy to see, easy to
Kind of like
cite.
there's an organic section. There could also be an
Yes, there
upcycled
could
section.
be an upcycled section. So that way, I was just curious because everything's on Pinterest or TikTok, but Pinterest, and looking it up, and there was only maybe two kind of articles or two type of organizations that were really highlighting that. And I would love to see that grow, and I would love to see retailers really start having that even on their websites, so that consumers, because as we looked around the room, raised our hands once we said, do you purchase upcycled? It's like, I don't know.
And there is an Upcycled Food Association button as well. That's another way you can communicate what you're doing.
And are CPG companies using the Kinova label, or do they have a Kyber logo or something they can use on pack? Kind of like Intel Inside type of thing.
Not yet. It's kind of, we're still fighting against that type of, connotation on preservatives. I think we'll get there, but yeah, it's definitely still educating. So, but I would say hopefully soon. Yeah.
Okay, great. So any questions from, that said, any questions from the audience on upcycling? Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to help the audience understand the Upcycled Food Association certification. Sue Marshall is one of the original founders of the association.
I think we have a microphone coming to you. Awesome, thank you. He's making his way back. There you go.
Hello? Okay, great. Sue Marshall with Net Zero, one of the founders of the Upcycled Food Association. And Mattson was one of the main supporters of creating that certification with the association, and that happened over COVID. So I do want to make everybody aware that there is a certification on back of pack today. So if you go on back of pack next to organic fair trade, you're going to see a UP with a leaf. There's several packaged goods out on the floor that are certified, so please look for that. And please look at your grocery. The Upcycled Food Certification was sold in December to Where Food Comes From, which is an organization that does organic certification. So it will start to scale, which is great. We currently have almost 500 products certified today in grocery, so look for that. But I just wanted everybody to be aware. It's a UP with a little leaf on back of pack. So please look at that. I think 7 Sundays, they're certified. They were up there. And then Brewers Foods, who was up there, if you go back to that one, they are at the KHE booth, and they are on every single table in that booth. So you can take a look at his crackers on KHE's booth today. But yeah, if anyone has any questions about the certification, I'm here. I'm happy to talk to you after the thing. But thanks, Mattson, because they were part of doing that.
Well, and thank you for coming, because we didn't know you were going to be here today, and so we appreciate it. And so any other questions from the audience about? And also, thank you for being our microphone person.
Yeah. Oh, no, yeah. It's all comes from the same source. So it's all upcycled stems from these farms. We have great relationships with these farmers. And one thing that I think I remember what I was going to say. So it was about, like, as far as supply chain goes, one thing that is great is we have a solid supply chain. They're mushrooms. They grow so well. They do a great job growing. And just mushrooms themselves use lower water and have a less lower carbon footprint than other traditional crops. That's what I wanted to say earlier. I'm sorry. But yes, it is always an upcycled ingredient.
Katie, you may have a perspective
Well,
on
I
that.
can give you an example. I don't have data that says the largest sources of, waste streams are, wheat or corn or what have you. I will say corn is another good example. We have a client that we worked with called Kazoo, which was on a mission to identify waste streams that they could monetize and turn into value-added products. They identified a corn germ that was a waste stream that was going to animal feed, and we were able to turn it into a tortilla chip for them, and then create a line of seasoned tortilla chips with them, which they were able to then launch. Each bag of tortilla chips that Kazoo sells saves 20 gallons of water relative to a conventional bag of tortilla chips. So that's just one example. Corn is a massive crop, obviously, in the United States, where I know that there's opportunity when we helped Kazoo with that opportunity.
And we know there's brewers' grains, but also like AIDP actually sells a ZOS prebiotic that's made from upcycled corn cobs that come from the biofuel industry. So there's upcycling happening, all over the place. And so, Hank, you had a question?
I'm just wondering if there's a quick metric that companies that want to try to think about developing upcycled ingredients might look to for an ROI. So I know Canova, has had a lot of investment behind it. There's a lot of money there. There was a lot of time spent on that ingredient. So for some of these other waste streams, I'm thinking about some of the lower profile upcycled ingredients like maybe cranberry seed oil. Originally they were making cranberry juice and they were just dumping the seeds, and now you've got cranberry seed oil as an actual ingredient in the industry. And I don't know how much development there was there vis-a-vis Kyber. So Kyber seems to me like there was a great deal of effort put into that, and effort meaning money. So I'm just wondering, is there some kind of help for a company that might be, say, developing a dietary supplement ingredient and they've got some waste there to say, is there something we can do with this, and, how can we figure out whether it's going to be cost effective in the long term for us to do it? You know what I'm saying? Because at the end, you've got to make money doing it, or it's just money down the drain, right? So.
Either of you have any perspective? I know that, that's an interesting question, Hank, because I've seen a couple of businesses that have had some sort of waste stream that they've wanted to upcycle, recycle, whatever the case may be, but sometimes it was more expensive to extract the upcycled ingredient than it was to buy the, either the synthetic version or the, natural organic version. I just saw one recently. It would have cost more to ship the ingredient to a processing facility than it would have cost. And so I'm assuming upcycling is more in the realm of the kind of the premium ingredients rather than, your really low cost commodity type ingredients, especially like when it comes to the grains, like the spent grains that AB InBev's doing. I mean, how does that compare cost-wise so that they can go, yeah, we're either making money with these spent grains or we're better off just send them to the landfill or the cattle lots.
Yeah, no, it's a very legit concern, and you do need to make that waste stream food grade, which it may not be initially, which is part of it as well. Honestly, I think a great resource would be the Upcycled Food Association. They've done a tremendous amount of research, and they have a lot of expertise that they could lend to someone who's thinking about that, and help get them started, and thinking of, getting them down the path towards creating that waste, adding value with that waste stream.
Well, and I think it's easier to think about this in the food realm because the volumes are so much bigger. So, in the end, the potential payoff is so much bigger. In the supplement space, which is what I report on, there has been some upcycling, but it's in the bigger volume categories like omega-3s. There's a company that's been creating omega-3 ingredient from the leftovers from pollock production. So after you cut the fillets off the fish, you get all these parts of the fish left, they still have oil in them, right? So they've been squeezing the oils out of those, making an omega-3 ingredient from that. But then when you get down to these smaller volume categories, I think there's companies that would like to do it if they could figure out a way, maybe an easier metric to figure out if it's going to pay, as opposed to, maybe spending a couple $1 million and then figuring out, oh yeah, we got an ingredient, but we can't make it pay. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, it seems like a pretty pricey adventure for most folks when they really go down the path. A lot of there's a waste stream almost everywhere with something that could be monetized, but it's you've got to do the math and figure out if it's the right thing for the business or if it just makes more sense to ditch it. So, any other questions? Yes.
I would have a question. What are the top 3 reasons of the end consumer why they should buy the upcycled products? Is it sustainability or the environmental impact? But what are really easily said, what are the reasons why end consumer buys an upcycled product?
I can take this a bit. So at least generationally, Gen Z is really who we're talking about here. That's really driving this. Certainly the rest of us are all interested as well, but they are more motivated to buy with their values than prior generations, and they do want to be part of the solution. They are willing to pay more, according to our research, for products that are made better, made with upcycled ingredients, made more sustainably. So it's mission-driven purchasing, which is, I think, part of the answer here. Particularly, at the end of the day, it still has to taste good, right? They're not going to be buying products that don't taste good, but they want the and. It's not and or, it's and. It needs to taste good. It also needs to be made sustainably, and it needs to be made cleanly, too, to meet their measure.
And I would add to that, there seems to be a growing connection between people wanting to buy what's good for me, but also good for the planet. So those two things used to be mutually exclusive, but now you have those that just want to feel good about what they're eating, not only what's going but also how it's playing out on the earth. So that's also still mission driven, but I see like an underlining of also just being very health conscious.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, both Mattson and Kainova will be around after we're done, and so feel free to stick around and ask any questions that you didn't want to ask to the general public. And beside that, I'd like to thank you all for coming and appreciate your time for today.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Audrey, and thank you, Katie.
Thank you.